Okay, we are pushing this to YouTube. Hello, I'm Kimberly, the host of the Rework podcast. I'm joined by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson, co-founders of 37signals. We are back with another Rework live. If you were here with us live, let us know in the chat. We did this for the first time last week. We enjoyed it so much. We thought we'd come back and do it again and address some of the questions that you guys have. So let us know if something comes up. Let us know in the chat. We'll all try to keep an eye on it and ask Jason and David those questions as we go along. So since our last live, we have since done a reveal of the Campfire product. Jason did a walkthrough of that on YouTube. I will link to that in the chat. And then David did a walkthrough of the installation. And so we thought we'd start with some of these questions around once. And Jason, since you also released the pricing, $299. Tell us about that. That obviously was a decision you guys had to make. Where did you guys get that number from?
Whenever we price things, and first of all, we guess. I've always called this ass pricing. You pick a number out of your ass. I know it's, whatever. And you just make it up. But I mean, of course, it has to at some point make sense. But essentially, you kind of find something that feels like you'd pay for it. $300? Yeah, hell yeah. And you get to see all the code? Hell yeah. And you get to run a chat on your own server? Yeah, that seems reasonable. I think a lot of people were expecting it to be 1,000 or more. In early days, people were expecting it to be a lot more than that, even because they're used to traditional enterprise installations and things being very, very expensive. So we wanted to keep it relatively low, actually quite low. And also, look, we're saying this is introductory pricing. So, we're providing ourselves some leeway here if we decide that we need to move it up down the road. We'll see how it all shakes out. But we wanted to make the first early adopters especially happy with a very reasonable price, and $299 just felt like the right number for us.
I think it's also a price that allows this to be a proper swing for it attempt. That I didn't want to look back upon the pricing and go like, you know what? If we just priced it a little lower, maybe the model would have taken off. Whatever. I want this to be like the best attempt that we can at a new novel idea. In many ways, just the same thing as when we launched Hey. When we launched Hey, the $99 spot for a year was, you know what, this is going up against free. So if we're like barely more than free, we're already infinitely more expensive than free. What is the kind of price point that feels aggressive for us? Can we do it? Does it fit? All the stuff. And this $299 for me felt like it was that. In fact, we talked about $399 as the pricing we would want to do. And then we went like, no, let's just push it. Because part of the idea here with Once is that this is just the first product. We plan to do multiple of these Once products that you can install, and each of them are going to be sold individually. So for us to truly test the concept, I'd rather go too aggressive, which is, as Jason says, why we have kind of the fallback of introductory prices. It is pretty aggressive. I mean, it has cost us a fair bit, just time and attention and staff to develop this system. We have to sell a fair number of these to even break even and more to make a product or a profit. But rather be aggressive out the gate, rather see is there feedback in the market? Is the market telling us something interesting about what can we learn quickly about this new quote unquote model that we're attempting?
The other thing I would say about when I think about numbers is let's say we want to raise the price. And we do want to get to $499 eventually. I'm making this up on the fly right now. Let's just say we want to get to $499. It's more reasonable to get from $299 to $499 than to start at $99 and then somehow try to justify a move to $499. Like, I don't know where this is going to sit, where it's going to settle out, let's say. So $299 feels right. It feels very affordable, all things considered, significantly more affordable than what people are typically paying for this sort of thing. And it gives us some room to play. And also, like, let's say we can sell 10,000 of these. That's, $3 million. Like, that's a good number, right? Feels good. That would feel right to us as a first attempt here. So let's see what happens. So that's sort of, you want to kind of set the table and make sure the odds are in your favor as best you possibly can. And this feels about right for that.
What's so interesting about the pricing too is we've already let in some people to I was going to say try it, but we haven't let people in to try it. We've let people in to buy it because we are now in the market testing phase. We've been talking about Once, we've revealed Campfire. Now is the moment of truth, as we've said repeatedly. Asking people for their credit card, that's the true verdict. So we've asked some people for the credit card or for their credit card. We've sold a fair number of these already to this small early access batch, and then we have some 30,000 people, I think, on the waiting list to have an opportunity to buy this. We'll see how well that converts. That's always the mystery. It's easy to give an email address. It's much harder to enter your credit card. So with this first batch, though, we've already gotten some of that initial feedback. Hey, I was spending, one customer that I quoted on Twitter said, I was spending £10,000 a year on a combination of Slack and Teams, and realized that all I actually need is just a basic chat. This fits the bill, and my bill is now 99.4% lower than what it was before. The $300 this person spent to buy the license, and then I think it was £60 a year to rent a cloud VM from Hefner to run it on. That was enough. That was all they needed, which is exactly that kind of market validation that we were hoping and looking for. And if you look at that in its abstract, right? Here's a customer who were presumably happy paying £10,000 a year 2 seconds ago, or I don't know if they were happy or not, but they were paying £10,000. And we're coming along and we offer something that is literally 99.4% cheaper. A normal, rational economist approach to this was going like, that's way too cheap. You should have charged whatever, £8,000 if the customer is willing to buy for $10,000 and you want to sell it 20% cheaper, that would have been enough. But that is not really what we're trying to do, like individually optimize to squeeze a single customer for max that is possible. We're trying to validate an entirely new way of distributing software. And I think for that validation to hit home, it has to be dramatic, because the product itself is actually about as undramatic as it'll get. We've intentionally designed the simplest possible chat you can do, a very generic chat to some extent. This is why we're getting away with not doing translations and all these things, because the software is so simple. All the novelty is in the distribution and in the pricing and in the run it yourself, don't pay for a service model. So that's what needs a big splash if you're going to unseat something like Slack or Teams or whatever people are used to using.
Okay, really quick. Dave wrote a comment that I thought was interesting. $299 for the source code alone is worth it. We've seen some of those comments on Twitter. Dave, do you want to tell us a little bit about what that means, what they're getting when they buy?
Yes. So one of the things that we decided quite early on was we were not going to try to do some fancy scheme to hide the source code. We have been a company that have been sharing our source code since inception. The vast majority of software we've ever written, we've shared in the form of Ruby on Rails, in the form of countless open source projects, Hotwire recently, all these other things. So that doesn't come alien to us, but it is new to share the commercial parts of the software, to share the product parts of the software. But you know what? I grew up with computers in the 80s and the 90s, and I pirated a lot of software. I was never a customer for that software. The vast majority of 99% of the software that I ended up pirating, I would never have bought. I'm not really that afraid of someone kind of taking the code and doing what with it? Like running their own service? Okay. Who's going to use a business tool, really? That's what Campfire is. From like stealing it? There's something there that this doesn't fit. I'm not really that worried about the risk. And then on the other side, I'm really excited about showing actual production code. I think this is one of the things that Jason and I try so often to do, is make things concrete. I made a series on YouTube called Writing Software Well some years back. And the number one feedback I got was like, my mind is blown that you're showing us the actual Basecamp code. It wasn't pseudo code. It wasn't hello world code. It wasn't example code. No, this was the real stuff that's running this $1 million business in production. And that's what people want to see. That's what they're really excited to see. So I thought, you know what? This is a good 1-2 punch. First, we're going to put out a great product that people can just use in its own right. $299 off, awesome price for that. At the same time, if all you want to do is learn how we build Ruby on Rails applications at 37signals, $299, that's what some courseware costs. Here's essentially a piece of courseware. I think we have like 8,000 lines of code. You can go through those. I would have loved to be able to buy code when I was first learning Ruby in this fashion. I would pay $299 to get a complete instruction in how someone is building a real application that's sold to final customers and running in production, has been benchmarked and optimized and all these other things, right? That just seems very valuable, both in a economic sense, but also in a teaching sense. And that's what we're trying to do here, as with everything. This is a shop of trying to out-teach the competition. And when we can combine all of them, I think that Japanese term ikaguru or something, like when you do something valuable, meaningful, that people want to pay for, like the intersection between all of those things, that's a concept applying to your life. But you can also apply it to products. And I love that we can apply all these different things to this product. I care about privacy, for example. Oh, okay. Once can deliver that because you run your own software, you own the database. Nothing goes to our, like, boom, there's a slice that goes in there. Oh, it's teaching someone something. Oh, that goes in there. Oh, it's generic software. So getting all of these things to intersect and overlap, I think, is what's so exciting. And being able to share the code feels really novel and interesting. And I can't wait to see where that goes. So the final thing I say, if you're buying it for that purpose, and I've seen some people who just outright come on and say, I don't really have a use for Campfire in terms of running my own software, but I'm going to buy it just to learn from it. We're planning, or I'm planning at least, to do a series of code walks. Once we have it fully out there, people have been able to digest it for a while. We'll walk through the code together. We'll do some private sessions for customers, large group of them, whoever's interested, and we will walk through the code and talk about it. I think that's it's a nice side thing from it. What do we call it? Sawdust that comes from just creating a piece of software. The source code is already there. We had to create it anyway. Can we then also make it something more than just sawdust on the floor?
Okay, let's go to Jesse's question, which is, due to the new self-hosting model, were you guys able to build and ship Campfire quicker than if it had been a traditional subscription-based product?
No. And the reason for that is we had to develop the whole infrastructure and model and everything to do the self-hosting. The second product we're going to produce in the months range, yes. But the first product, no, because we had to develop all the tooling. This is one of the things I often think of Pixar. Whenever Pixar is making a major new movie, you think, like, you know what? If they just used the old molds, they'd be able to make something very quickly. They don't. They come up with new software, new everything. This is why the major movies that they make usually end up taking years, because they want to move the state of the art forward. They want to push the boundaries. And we had a little bit of the same thing. All the tooling we needed to create a self-hosted, super easy to install system that could be maintained and you could do backups and all these things required the development of new tooling, new material. So we didn't just take everything there already was and applied it, but the second round is hopefully going to be that. That's why we're setting our aspirations for 2024 so high in terms of being able to release 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how many of these products we'll ultimately end up releasing, but to build the molds now for this first product, such that the second and third and fourth come much quicker.
Okay. Here's a question about support on Once. It'd be interesting to hear how you plan on dealing with support for Once software as you don't have access to the machines and logs.
Well, go ahead, David. You can take it. It's technical.
Well, let me answer the technical part of that at least.
Yeah.
There's two parts. One is that we've tried to make this really simple with as few moving parts internally as we could possibly get away with. That is, for example, why we use this database called SQLite, which I was going to say it's not really a database. Of course, it's a database, but it's a database that doesn't require a separate process that you manage. It's like a single file. And this SQLite setup is kind of novel. There's a lot of people in the industry currently talking about it because SQLite is really good. It's been used in embedded in native apps for years and years and all sorts of other applications. Now people are starting to realize you can actually do something this simple for a single tenancy service like the one we're providing. So we have that. Like, keep the thing simple, less likely to break, fewer features, less bells and whistles. Like, let's really get it down to cartridge form. This is what we were thinking about internally. We were comparing ourselves. Do you know what? When you release software for the Super Nintendo, you would literally burn your game into a ROM chip that got produced inside a plastic shell that someone inserted. You did not get a second try. You literally had to produce, if not flawless software, at least very good enough software that didn't crash all the time. And I think the fact that modern SaaS has allowed us to just like release stuff that we then fix in post, as they would say in the movie business, just fix it in post, is occasionally making people more sloppy. I don't want to be too negative about that because I think it has a lot of benefits too, but it certainly also has some drawbacks in terms of just that. So anyway, that's one part of it. And the other part of it is that we actually do have opt-out telemetry for crash reports. So if we built in crash reporting into the system, it just made it in before we started shipping in larger numbers here. So now if the system crashes, we will get a crash report unless you're going to turn it off. So it gives me good confidence that we have something good here that people can fix without us having to log into their machine. This is the other key innovation that for me, when I pitched this once idea to Jason last year, was instrumental to thinking that it was viable, was the Docker, which is this technology that essentially allows you to wrap up an entire system into a single box, is now, it's so repeatable. So if someone says like, hey, this thing isn't working on my machine, we can actually replicate that machine without having to connect to it. We could see, oh, you're running Campfire point 123. We will install that. We will know we have exactly the same conditions of setup as you do because it's all running on this Docker runtime, and we can replicate the bugs without having to access your machines. That did not used to be true. I remember hearing the stories of GitHub, who's had an enterprise version you can install for the longest time. And I remember in the early 2000s or 2010s, they were doing this, and it was a very labor-intensive business in the sense of supporting people installing their software and all sorts of different kind of configurations of hardware. You had to debug it. Does it fit with this? Does it match with this? You have to log in. We can't do that at $299. At $299, this got to be a fucking Walkman. Right? There's a Walkman here. You're getting it. Sony made it, shipped it across the ocean. Maybe there's an 800 number on the back of the box. Very unlikely that people are going to actually call that number. And that's what it has to be at that price point. Now, are we going to answer people's email if they have an issue? Of course we're going to do that. Are we going to go through some steps here to figure it out and make sure it's resilient? Of course we're going to do that. If we sell 10,000 copies or 100,000 copies or however many we sell, are we going to field emails from every customer every week? No. If this model required that, there will be no business. You can't sell it at $299 because then it's a service and you should just charge on a monthly basis.
Let me add something from the product side. What we're trying to do is create things that have as little surface area as possible, which these once products are meant to be radically simple. And if you think about it in terms of like a house, how do bugs get in? Well, bugs get in through cracks. Where do cracks form? They usually form where materials meet, where different surfaces meet. That's usually where there's gaps. And the more features you have, the more materials are meeting. The more room there is for gaps and cracks and all sorts of things that you can't see and conditions you're unfamiliar with and things that are buried behind this and behind that. So we're just trying to keep the number of surfaces to an absolute minimum, the feature set to an absolute minimum, just deliver the basics. We're really focusing on the 80-20 rule, maybe even 90-10 essentially. What is the core epicenter? Let's just do that. And there's very few things that are going to break because there are very few things in it to begin with. That's where it all has to really start. Because just the bigger it is, the more, the more turns and surfaces and meetings, the more complex it's going to get and the more problems you're going to have. You cannot have a big, huge system with fewer problems than a small system. Small systems just have fewer problems. There's just only so much that can go wrong. Now, you could totally fuck it up and it could be terribly built and it's just going to break no matter what it is. But we have a pretty high bar for quality. So you do that and then you just focus that and train that on a few things and you're in really good shape.
The funny thing is we always done this, even with our SaaS products. Especially in the early days, we used to talk about less software, a whole bunch, less features, less moving parts, less people, which basically means more constraints. And that's what we're sort of thinking about. You can think of less stuff, but all that lessness, if you will, is coming from more constraints. Oh, we have to ship this out to customers in a final form. They run it. All these things that putting pressure on it. It's only $299. We only get to charge once. All these pressures is sort of forming on it. And to turn whatever's in there into a diamond, we have to actually let those constraints through. We have to let them influence the product design and the feature design and the programming design, because otherwise it's just going to be brittle. It's just going to fall apart as soon as people put it in there. But the exciting part, and Jason and I were just talking about this yesterday, is like we're in the most delicious moment with Once Campfire right now. Deliciousness is like you can taste it. There's great response from the market, right? Like we've signed up 30,000 people to a list of interested parties. We've been getting some early feedback. It's wonderful. But what does that mean? Does that mean it's like 1,000 sales wonderful? Like not to poo-poo 1,000 sales. That's 300 grand. That's good, fine, whatever. But that's not like the home run. We're gonna really bet like the farm on this. Is it gonna be a 10,000 unit sale thing, or is it gonna be 100,000? We don't know. And I love the uncertainty of this. I love being in this moment of like it could go one way or the other. We had sort of the same thing with when we launched Hey. We had these early ideas, how many we think we were going to sell, and then we had this incredible launch campaign that in part came due to Apple's shenanigans, and we ended up just vastly blowing through all our predictions. But we did not know. On the day of launch, we did not know. That is the magic of the moment of truth. Asking people for their credit card is the most revealing moment in all of product development.
Okay, well, I dropped in the chat the 2 videos that I mentioned early on, one Jason walking through Campfire and then David walking through the installation. And we have a question about this, Jason, for you. Someone loves your off-the-cuff style videos. Do you prep, or is it really just you in front of the camera and you go for it?
I don't prep. I just go for it. Sometimes I'll stumble in the first 30 seconds and start over. But after the 30-second mark, I'm just going to go. And even if it sucks, it sucks. I mean, like if it's really, really bad, I'll do it again. But if I fumble this or forget that or do something out of order or whatever, it's totally fine. It's just like what I'm aiming for is like, if I was sitting next to you, I'm like, here, let me show you something. I'm not going to start over 3 minutes into here, let me show you something. If I screw up, I just screw up and I keep going. That's what you do in real life. You don't start over, you just go. And so that's what I'm aiming for here. I know it's recorded, so you kind of want it to be better or something. I don't know, but I tend to not put that pressure on myself, recognizing that after I watch it, or if I watch it again, I'm like, I could have said that better, or there could have been more enthusiasm there, or I should have said this first, or I missed that thing, or I didn't show people how to actually start a new ping, whatever. That's just how it goes. And that way, here's the key thing. I've been talking to a friend of mine about this because he's one of these people who has to get everything right, otherwise he can't do it. So he'll have a 25-minute recording in the end that took 25 days. If I have an 8-minute recording, I want it to take 8 minutes. That's what I want it to take. It should be real time. 8-minute recording should take 8 minutes, maybe 10 if I have to start over once. That's it. It cannot take a day or 2 or 3 or 8 or whatever, or 80, right? That's how you make a lot of progress on a lot of things in a short period of time, is you just do them and you move on. So video, certain things, of course, like there's like we're not going to build software where we don't look back at it and test it and the whole thing, right? But there's certain things like video, a video is a video. And again, I keep thinking about if someone was just here, what would I do? This is what I would do. And I'm just going to put it on tape.
I think what's key about that is it shows the authenticity that is revealed in a single cut. I'm just sitting down, I'm going to show you, is actually half the magic. Sometimes it's all of the magic. And I liken this to, I remember reading about the song Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. When they first recorded that, they did like a rough cut right away, right? Like, they're like, just get it in so we have it all down. And then they spent 3 days trying to beat that. They could not beat it. They could not beat the initial cut because the initial cut had all the sort of enthusiasm and energy you get from like, we're doing it live. We're doing it live, and it just comes true. I try to do the same thing more or less with my writing. Like this morning, I wrote 2 pieces. And I had them in my fingers, and I wanted to get them out of my fingers before I had to drop off the kids. And I just know that like that's a hard constraint. I gotta drop off the kids at 8:30. I'm sitting down here in front of my computer at 7 something. There's 2 things I want to say. If I don't say them now, I'm not gonna say them at all. That's how I often think about it. And I think it's a little bit the same with some of this video showing. If we're not gonna do it now, I'm not gonna do it at all. There's so many things that pull on me all the time that I can go in a million different directions. I'm never gonna find the time to make it perfect. So either we do it now or we don't do it. And if we do it now, it's going to be better anyway. It's going to have that energy of it. And the thing I think to realize for people who find this intimidating, and it is to some extent, I actually find it more intimidating to sit down and just do a recording than this. Whenever I'm reacting to live, at least to me, that puts me totally at ease. Like if I have to prepare a conference talk, I'll fret about that conference talk if I have to prepare it. If I just have to show up and like riff, I don't give a shit. Like, actually, I better than not give a shit. I enjoy it. Just show up totally cold. Whatever comes to my mind is going to come out, right? But you could practice that. So this is not Jason's first product video. Not the first time he's done this cut. Just keep doing it. But you will get better at it if you're doing it for real. It's got to be intentional, diligent practice, and diligent practice requires some focus of an outcome. So one of my favorite YouTubers is MKBHD. He reviews whatever, electronics, phones and stuff like that. And he's been posting on YouTube since I think he was 14 or something. And like the videos are still there. It's so awesome that you can go back and see his first videos and you're like, yeah, of course they suck. Because anyone's first take of anything sucks. And now he's not only one of the most enjoyable YouTubers to watch, he's so damn polished. That polish came from just doing it a ton of times. So you can't skip that phase by just iterating on the same one piece of material for 25 days. I don't think you're actually going to get good quick like that. Do 25 pieces. That'll get you good.
Another thing to help with the intimidation is like, it's easy to say this, but I really would encourage people to think about these kind of videos as like, if you were sitting down with a friend, how would you show them the product? You would not put on your professional hat and talk like a robot. First, let me take you through this. And that's not how you would do it. You would just be like, hey, yeah, let me show you. You want to see what I've been working on? Let me show you this thing. And it just takes a lot of the stress and the tension out of it. Now you might think, well, I can't put that out in the public internet because it's not polished. No one gives a shit. No one cares about, that's not what people really care about. They want to see the thing. And the more you can be like, I'm just here with you showing you, people will actually understand what you're doing. If you try to polish it up and get all stiff and rigid, it's almost going to be terrible. Almost certainly going to be terrible unless you're really, really good at that. So you can actually be bad at just showing your friend, but that's actually pretty good. But if you're bad at trying to be professional and tight, it's going to be really bad. So just chill out, show your friend, and just happen to have the camera on. In fact, I think there's another thing I would encourage people to do. I haven't seen this really done, but if you're really good at, like, let's say you're going to Zoom with a friend and show them something you're working on, just show them and record and make that the video. The actual video is showing someone else, because it can be intimidating to look into a camera and go, who's going to see this? Well, if I'm talking to somebody and showing them something, just show them and have their head in the Zoom thing too. Who cares? Go, here, I just showed a friend. Here's the product. So I would try that.
That's what I actually did for the infamous first Rails video, the 15-minute blog video.
Yes.
I tried to record it and I fucking couldn't get it out. I was exactly stiff like a robot. And do you know what I ended up doing after, I think, 3 days of just spinning around trying to make the professional video? I took the goddamn audio of a presentation I'd given in Brazil for it, and I just copied and pasted the audio into it to match it, so it has like all the room noise and whatever, and all the weird look at all the things I'm not doing stuff that just comes off the cuff when you're riffing in front of a live audience that would never come out if you wrote down a script. And it was amazing. It was a lot of fun. Now I say this principle that Jason is talking about here, just show it like you would show a friend, is also a principle I've seen you apply, Jason, to copywriting. When you can't get the words just right, you'd go like, yeah, how would you explain it to someone you know? Just do that. Just write that. Don't try to come up with like the cleverest, bestest copy. Just like, how would you tell a friend about this? And I find that really unblocked. Like, humans are actually quite decent native communicators when they don't feel like they're on a stage.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like, people are like, I don't know how to say this. Well, just say it out loud. What would you say out loud? Well, here, I would say it this way. Then write that down. So write like you talk. Don't write like you write like you talk. And that is a great way to break through any of this, like, I don't know how to say it on paper. Then say it out loud and then write it down. So, okay, let's move on.
Okay, well, let's go to this one, which is marketing focused. I know we have heard you guys say that everything is marketing. This person wants to know, what would be your strategy for marketing if you didn't have a pre-existing audience?
We didn't. And we've always been doing the same thing. So no one has a pre-existing audience. Like, unless you're some celebrity and you're transferring that celebrity to some new realm, okay. Right? But when you first started, no one had an audience. So we didn't have an audience. We had like a few hundred people who happened to read a blog we've been writing for a couple of years. And this is way back in the days, the late 90s, early 2000s, where there wasn't social media to even get the word out. So I don't even know how people got the word out, frankly. I don't know how people stumbled on our blog. through Yahoo search, probably, whatever it was at the time, or Alta Vista, whatever it was. And then, hey, you should check this out and check this out. And I spoke somewhere at a conference, someone heard me, and I mentioned there's a blog, whatever. So we had a few hundred people listening to us or reading us by the time we launched Basecamp in 2004. What did we do? We just taught. We shared, we taught. We opened up. We were transparent about all the things that we're doing and why we're doing them and how we're doing them. And we built an audience over time. But we're doing the same thing today that we did back then. We have a bigger audience now, and we have more ways to say things and more ways to share, but it's still the same fundamental stuff. I don't know how to do it any other way. I'd be the wrong person to ask how to do it any other way. This is all I know. So this is what I would do again if I had to. But it requires patience, because you're going to have zero audience initially, and you're going to have to build that up. So it's going to take some time. It's easier to build an audience today than it was way back then, but also people are paying attention to a lot of different things. So it's harder there. But I just know no other way than the way I've done it.
And I think the key way of doing it, be interesting. That sounds hard. The easy part is everything is interesting if you dig or scratch hard enough. Everything. You can make, there's someone I stumbled upon on TikTok who has a massive following. Do you know what she teaches people? Excel. Fucking Excel. Spreadsheets. Like how to do things in spreadsheets. And I'm like, that sounds like the most boring thing in the freaking world. But you watch that for 5 minutes and you go, oh, not so boring. Actually, it's interesting because you're showing me all these things and I didn't know it and you're applying it and da-da-da-da. That's what we try to do. Just keep scratching. Keep making things interesting. Now, are you going to be super interesting on day one that you try to scratch it? No, you're not. But the only way to become interesting is just to keep at it, keep scratching, keep digging, keep going further down. There's so much stuff on the internet that is just compilations. Oh, the 5 ways to do XYZ. No. Don't bother your time with like listicles and shit like that. That's trying to ape what other people are doing. Don't do that. Just keep scratching. Keep going deeper. Write deeper and more detailed and more, I was going to say insightful, but insightful is the side effect of going deep into something. Sharing the expertise that you're going through. Even if you don't have all of the expertise, then share the journey of it. Everything is interesting if you keep scratching.
Okay, we're going to take just a couple more questions before we wrap it up. And one is, what other kinds of products can we expect from the Once branding? I think, David, you mentioned a second product early on. I heard that slip out.
We'd like to do a bunch.
Fourth, fifth, 50th.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what the next one exactly is going to be, but we have a handful of ideas. The fundamental, the way we're going to pick these, we might come up with brand new ideas that don't exist. So that's possible. But probably what we're going to do is we're going to look at the market and go, what are the tools that we all use? Which ones are way too expensive? Which ones have become way too complicated? And can we radically simplify those and make them way more affordable and make them installable? Like, so, like chat obviously is a perfect first thing. Like millions and millions, basically every company has chat. It's become wildly expensive and obscenely expensive. It's a commodity, and that everybody knows how to use it. Your mother, your grandmother knows how to text somehow, probably, right? Like at least like on her phone or something. Like people know how to do this, so we don't need to teach anyone or explain anything. The UI is completely self-explanatory. So we're looking for more things like that. And by the way, there are lots and lots and lots of those things, because there's lots and lots and lots of things companies do all the same way. And there's a lot of software that exists, and there's a lot of markets that are saturated with roughly the same tools, and everyone's still paying luxury prices for those. So there's a lot of opportunities. We're also going to probably go back to what we call the Stone Age. The Stone Age was like the 90s, when there was a lot of really good ideas that have been forgotten. Really good, solid, simple tools that have been turned into overkill, horrible messes. And we're going to go back to some of those tools and go, we can make those again, because those had some nugget of specialness to them. They were just perfect as they were. But as time goes on, software gets more and more complicated and complex. Let's go back to the beginning. So we're going to look back at the Stone Age too. And hopefully we're, like this whole once concept does not hinge on Campfire. We're going to make a handful of products. How many it is, 2, 3, 4, 5, don't know. but we're going to make a few for sure and see how it all shakes out over time.
Okay. Oh, David?
This is where we often refer to blue ocean strategy, which is I was going to say my favorite, but that sounds like I have a lot. It's probably the only business book on business strategy that I've ever truly enjoyed and found like, you know what, that taught me something fundamental that I keep using on a regular basis. The blue ocean strategy for the Once brand is that the innovation is in distribution, not in product. That's not to say we can't make interesting products or we can't have interesting product ideas, but that's not the main focus. The main focus is to innovate on distribution, on pricing, on ownership model, on all of those other aspects that are not the product itself, which is radically different from the way we do our service products. Basecamp and Hey are both wildly innovative services where we really try to push the envelope of like, what if we totally reimagine email? What if you totally reimagine calendar? Campfire is not a total reimagination of chat. It is a generic version of chat, and all the innovation is in distribution and pricing and so forth. So if you apply that frame to the hunt for the next product, you have some idea of where we would want to go next. I think of it as pharmaceuticals. That's where that generic word comes from. The lifespan of a patent for pharmaceuticals, I think, is 18 or 19 years. After that, the market, the wealthy of the world, actually relies on the fact that someone shows up and goes like, yep, we're not doing any fundamental new research here. We will take a life-saving piece of medicine that's rolled off patent, and we will make it cheaper, easier to get, easier to distribute. And that's an incredibly valuable aspect of the economy, that we need someone to do that. Why is that not happening in software? Why are there not someone who takes ideas who've long since rolled off the ideological patent of, is it new, is it innovative, do people know how to use it? And then they package it better, and then they can sell it dramatically cheaper while still retaining the fact that this is a product business. I've seen other people compare Campfire, for example, to a bunch of open source tooling or other kind of tools. There's a million ways you can chat. It's not like we invented chatting here. The whole point is we did not. The whole point is that it's a saturated market. But there are people who would like to buy a polished, packaged product that's easy to install, that was made by someone that they trust, and that it's not about getting the price to zero, which is what open source would bring you. It's about just like, I'm happy going down 99.6% in my bill. I don't need to squeeze out the last 0.6% of the bill. I don't need it to go to zero. I'd rather just buy something that's nicely packaged and nicely distributed from people I trust, which is the same thing as generics in medicine. There are generic companies, that's what they specialize in. They build up a reputation that like, you know what, we'll take this compound, we will reproduce it, but it will be accurate. It won't be full of fucking rat poison. It'll be good stuff. It just won't be novel.
Okay, last question before we wrap it up. When will Campfire be available to purchase?
Hopefully within a few weeks here. We're very close. We're releasing it to another, couple hundred this week, few hundred, maybe 1,000.
Today.
Yeah. Today.
Today, a few hundred. Today. So we've let in less than 100 so far. Yeah. A few hundreds today, and then hopefully thousands shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and then everyone soon after that. So real soon. Real soon.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us live. These lives won't always focus on once, but we like to tell you what's going on right now at 37 Signals. Obviously, that's something that we've been focused on. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for your questions. If we didn't get to them, hopefully we will get to them next week. Join us here again live. We'll do another one coming up soon. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.